That was Silence by Marshmello featuring Khalid. And this is 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. Once again, I'm your host, Jell, and we love to kick the show off by talking about what games came out this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are coming to theaters. So, this week, PlayStation 4... Bokosuka Wars 2 actually came to America on PS4. It might have had a release on Xbox One earlier in the year. I'm not 100% sure, but it's available in America. If you're unfamiliar with Bokosuka Wars, it was a game that was once known as one of the worst Famicom games of all time in America. Except that's just because we didn't really know how to play. It could be considered... I don't know. You could kind of call it the first real-time strategy game, maybe, but not in a typical way. It was like a very, very old and janky version of Kessen. That would be the best way to describe Bokosuka Wars, once you understand how to actually play it. It is mostly known for its game over screen, which says, "Wow, you lose!" Either way, Bokosuka Wars 2 is here, and, kind of want to play it. It has a new table full of ducks feature, which I'm very curious about. Moving right along. Brawlhalla has also come out, and that is sort of a Smash Brothers clone. That's on PS4 now, and I think that might be free to play. According to this, Chaos Child is also out, along with Dungeons 3, which I swear was already out, but whatever. Elex, FIFA 18 Ronaldo Edition. Gran Turismo Sport, which, we're going to talk a little bit about that later in the show, but I might want to be wary about Gran Turismo Sport. It might be the worst Gran Turismo ever. Beyond that, Hex Card Clash, Megaton Rainfall, which is... available both in and out of VR, and I think I'm going to be picking that up after this show. Wow, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. No Heroes Allowed VR, which is a continuation of a PSP game series now ported to VR, and it's about essentially being the villain of a Japanese RPG, and you breed monsters and send them out to go defeat heroes. It's a little bit of a real-time strategy game. Rogue Trooper Redux, which is a remake port thing of Rogue Trooper. There's a lot of those going around these days. South Park, The Fractured But Whole. The Jackbox Party Pack 4, and WWE 2K18, which we'll also talk a little bit about later in the show. I actually picked that up. I admit I'm not a big wrestling guy, but I am a big character customization guy, so I've got some things to say there. Tomorrow, Arcade Archives Neo Geo Robo Army will be coming out, which is the game Maxima is from, for all you KOF fans. Along with Life is Strange Before the Storm Episode 2 Brave New World. And then let's see. Yeah, that's still this week. So Friday, Abyss the Wraiths of Eden, Let's Sing 2018, Real Farm, and Spiral Splatter all come out. Moving on to Xbox One. Xbox One gets Dungeons 3, Elex, F1 2017, FIFA 18 Ronaldo Edition, Rogue Trooper Redux, South Park, The Fractured But Whole, the Jackbox Party Pack 4, Torque L Physics Modified Edition, WWE 2K18, and then tomorrow, Arcade Archives Robo Army, Life is Strange Before the Storm Episode 2 Brave New World, and then on Friday, Abyss, The Wraiths of Eden, and Real Farm. How about the Nintendo Switch? Nintendo Switch got Don't Knock Twice, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle Ultra Challenge Pack, NBA 2K18, and Rogue Trooper Redux. Apparently today, it's getting a game called Putty Pals, which I think is a... No, okay, it's not related to that at all. So it got some game called Putty Pals that has nothing to do with the old game Super Putty. And then tomorrow, it's also getting Arcade Archives Robo Army, along with Elliot Quest, Jidge, it's like Judge, but spelled with a Y, Party Golf, Revenant Saga, Spelunker Party, Super Ping Pong Trick Shot, the Count Lucanor, and the Jackbox Party Pack 4. And, oh wow, Friday is Fire Emblem Warriors and Siberia. But still, Fire Emblem Warriors is Friday. That snuck up on me. Okay. Moving on, 3DS. Apparently we just got Etrian Odyssey 5, Beyond the Myth. And then tomorrow, Galaxy Blaster Code Red. And then Fire Emblem Warriors is also coming to 3DS, so that's a thing. That'll be Friday. And the PlayStation Vita got Chaos Child and will be getting Spiral Splatter on Friday. Moving on. What's coming out next week? According to this, Chaos Child somehow manages to come out twice next week. Comes out on PlayStation 4. Deer Hunter Reloaded. Hidden Agenda, which has no relation to Global Agenda. Just Dance 2018, which will be released on freaking everything, including the original Nintendo Wii and Wii U, because that's what they do with Just Dance, because there is so little actual mechanics behind the scenes. Me and Just Dance don't get along very well. It seems fun until you look under the hood and you realize, oh, wait a second, there's no game here. There's no way to tell if I'm doing good or bad. I just get numbers, and I assume I dance along with the people on screen. So that's why Just Dance can be ported to literally everything. And yes, we'll be getting a Wii release. There will be a new Wii game in 2018. Unfortunately, it is Just Dance. Moving along, Knowledge is Power comes for PlayStation 4, along with Knights of Azure 2, Bride of the New Moon. That snuck up on me. Rapala Fishing Pro Series, Rugby 18, SingStar Celebration, That's You. The Inner World, The Last Wind Monk. Okay. The Mummy Demastered. Ooh. That's a new game from Way Forward, by the way. It looks kind of Contra-esque, which they did Contra 4, so might be pretty nice. We Sing Pop, and Yomawari Midnight Shadows. Moving on, Xbox One next week is getting Deer Hunter Reloaded, Just Dance 2018, Rapala Fishing Pro Series, Rugby 18, The Inner World, The Last Wind Monk, The Mummy Demastered, and We Sing Pop. Ooh, along with AER, Memories of Old, and... is that next week? No. Wait, yes. Next Friday, Assassin's Creed Origins, Little Nightmares Complete Edition, Real Farm somehow again. And Wolfenstein 2, New Colossus. Wow. So I forgot to check that for the PlayStation 4. Yeah, PlayStation 4 is also getting Assassin's Creed Origins, Little Nightmares Complete Edition, Real Farm, and Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. Moving on, Nintendo Switch next week. What are you getting? It is getting Poi Explorer Edition, Just Dance 2018, Night Terrors, spelled with a K, Knights of Azure 2, Bride of the New Moon. Yes, that's actually coming to Switch. Redout, and The Mummy Demastered, along with... wow, wait, really? That soon? Next Friday is Super Mario Odyssey. What? I thought that would be like in November or December. Next Friday is Super Mario Odyssey. Oh boy. I need money. Moving on. 3DS is getting Workle Worlds. Okay. And the PlayStation Vita next week is getting Chaos Child again somehow, and Yomawari Midnight Shadows. That concludes... oh, wait. On Nintendo Wii, next week is Just Dance 2018. On Nintendo Wii U next week is Just Dance 2018. I'm sorry, I had to. Okay, moving right along. Anime in theaters. On October 28th, 30th, and November 1st, Spirited Away will be in theaters as part of G-Kids' Studio Ghibli Fest thing, where they put a new Studio Ghibli film in theaters every month. Originally, they were only doing 2 days, but it was so successful they added a third day. So, October 28th, 30th, and November 1st, Spirited Away will be in theaters. And moving into November, Pokemon the Movie I Choose You will be in theaters November 5th and 6th, which is sort of a weird theatrical remake retelling of the first couple episodes of Pokemon, but not. It looks weird. It looks kind of weird, but who knows? It'll be in theaters. You can see it. Anyway, that concludes our new games for this week and next week, and our anime in theaters. When we come back, we got a pile of interesting news, and I will tell you what is a little bit of what's wrong with Gran Turismo Sport, so stay tuned. Until then, here's New Level by ASAP Ferg featuring Future. Okay. Here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned for more GameBabble Live. That was New Level by ASAP Ferg featuring Future, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. So, just had a minute to look up what the Mummy Demastered actually looked like in action, and wow, Metroidvania really describes it. I was saying it might be kind of Contra-esque. No, Metroidvania about does it, because it literally looks like a combination of Metroid and Castlevania. Like, in it you play like some kind of faceless military grunt guy, and you have a gun and you're shooting things, but the environment, it has a clock tower where you're jumping between gears. It's Castlevania. I took a look at it. It's like, okay, this is, you play as an almost Samus-esque character in Castlevania. Okay. Either way, it's coming to, like, everything. Not as many everythings as Just Dance, but it will be on Nintendo Switch, so that's likely where I'll pick it up, because that game looks really good. Go look up the trailer on YouTube. The Mummy Demastered, beautiful retro sprite work. I mean, it's clearly running on the Shantae engine, okay? It looks like Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, except, you're a random military grunt fighting zombies and things. See, the thing you have to remember about Way Forward is that they are a for-hire developer. That's where they make their real money. Their bread and butter does not come from Shantae, because that series was losing money for a very long time, where it was just a passion project. It's only now that it's really gotten popular. Where they make their money is making licensed games. So that new The Mummy movie came out. They were like, oh crap, we don't really have a video game for this. No one can really cook up a video game for us fast enough. Hey, Way Forward, what can you do? And they're like, well, we could make you a Metroidvania with some pixel art. And they're like, good, we'll take it. That's probably about how it went down. I have no full confirmation. Anyway, told you I'd be telling you a little bit about Gran Turismo Sport. Now, fair warning, I did not pick the game up. I'm not really a big race car guy. But what I've overheard has been very disconcerting. A lot of people are saying that Gran Turismo Sport is sorely lacking in content and features. Like, it barely has a single-player mode, and the multiplayer mode is just a complete mess. Like, I'm not hearing good things. Like, particularly, I went to the blog Pretend Race Cars, because I'd heard about them. Pretend Race Cars is, some people call it a hate blog, because it is so negative about so many racing games. But one of the things that really intrigued me, like, it's a fascinating blog to me because I don't really follow hardcore racing games that much. I play arcade racers sometimes when they look particularly flashy. So I don't know anything about simulation racing, so when these people are like, they're using the same AI model as last year, they're using this AI model, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know this was a thing. Interesting. But what made this disconcerting was they mentioned that there's almost no real car collection aspect to Gran Turismo Sport. You see, you do collect cars and earn them a lot. The thing is, you don't get to use them. In like 90% of the races, both offline and online, they force you to use the default cars for that car class. You don't get to bust out any of the cars from your big garage full of cars. It's like, well, what's even the point then? But speaking of what's the point, and this is the thing that really bothers me, and the reason why I had to take a break to talk about this, is the VR mode. Now, I know what you're going to say. Who cares about the VR mode? It's just, it's a niche, tacked-on thing. Okay, fine, there's a little tiny mode you can play in VR. The reason I bring this up is as I'm looking up, like a few days before, and just now as I was looking up the game release list on Game FAQs, they have a big full website ad for Gran Turismo with PlayStation VR that says, "The future is now, virtual reality racing." And more than that, Sony is really hyping up the VR angle, and they're even releasing a PlayStation VR Gran Turismo Sport Bundle Pack, which would be as ludicrous as releasing a Tekken 7 PlayStation VR Bundle Pack, because that's what the VR mode is like. Early on, they had said, oh, yeah, no, the VR mode will be the whole game. You'll be able to play the whole game in VR. And then they said, oh, actually, we don't want you wearing the headset that long, so we're going to have a special VR tour mode. But that'll still be pretty cool. And people tried it out, and they had full races at a lot of the demo events. But now that the game is out, do you know what the VR mode is? The VR mode that they're packaging the game with the PlayStation VR for, that they're making such a big deal about. You can do two things in it. You can look at the cars, or you could do a 2-lap, one-on-one race against a really, really dumb AI. And that's it. No time trials, no full races, no ability to increase the lap count, no way to improve the enemy AI. Shoot, you can't even change your seating position, which is a feature they have outside of VR. The VR mode is quite possibly the most intentionally neutered thing we've ever seen this side of Tekken 7. It's almost identical to the tacked-on VR mode in Tekken 7, except here's the thing. Tekken 7 didn't even put a PlayStation VR enhanced stripe on it. They barely mentioned that there's a VR mode. So it didn't really matter when you got Tekken 7 and you found out the VR mode was just a model viewer and the ability to do a fight with no life bars so it never ends in a completely empty stage. It was really weird that was what they went with for their VR mode. But they didn't really make a big deal out of it. So it was like, oh, this is a disappointment, but okay, it's a tacked-on bonus mode. Here, this is what they're trying to use as a major selling point for both Gran Turismo Sport and the PlayStation VR, and there's nothing there. And everyone's looking at it, and it's like, oh, well, probably hardware limitation. No! The fact that you can't do time trials in VR is not a hardware limitation. That is someone screwed up. There is so much more. Like, they could have had you race against online course ghosts or have an online one-on-one race feature. These are all things they could have done with PlayStation VR that wouldn't have taxed the system more, but they're not there. There's no options. There's no features. Buying Gran Turismo Sport for the VR is absolutely a waste of money. And it's really disappointing because it makes Gran Turismo look bad, it makes Sony look bad, it makes the PlayStation VR look bad, it makes the very concept of VR look bad in general, which, in case you haven't noticed, I happen to be a little bit of a fan of VR. I hope it, starts to take off next console generation. But how Sony, what are you doing? And then hearing that, even outside of VR, the game is sorely lacking. My, how the mighty have fallen. I mean, as it is, it takes eons to get a Gran Turismo game out because they put so much time and effort into it. And now, they've just been clobbered by everyone. It's a little bit disheartening, to be completely honest with you. It's very strange, too. I don't understand the logic behind this. Sony is trying to sell a game based on a mode that barely does anything. I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, we will take a short break right about now, and when we get back, we will let's see, we'll take a short break, and when we get back, we'll talk about more VR, or more video game news, but we'll talk there's some VR things to talk about, believe it or not. Some good VR games came out alongside Gran Turismo Sport. And then we've got some, like, non-VR news, like, hey, more fighters for Dragon Ball FighterZ just got announced, so you might want to stay tuned for that. Here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. But until then, here's Light It Up by Luke Bryan. Please enjoy, and thank you for... That was Drive by Reed 4, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. Welcome back to GameBabble Live. Video game news and information show airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. So, I stumbled across something weird. I was looking at the game release lists for the Xbox One and noticed that on the 31st, Rush, a Disney Pixar adventure, and Disneyland Adventures was coming out for Xbox One. Now, both of those were old Xbox 360 Kinect games that came out. And so I'm like, wait, are they actually going to make a new Kinect game? Or are they actually going to... My first question was, wait a second, are they actually going to support backwards compatibility with 360 Kinect games now? Because that was one of the things that the backwards compatibility on the Xbox One lacked, and the answer is no. So my hopes of a Rhythm Party on Xbox One are completely dashed. Rhythm Party was actually good. It's like the one reason to own an Xbox One, that and Dance Central. So that's out the window, but then I'm like, wait, so they're going to do 4K HD remasters of these old Kinect games. Are they going to use the Xbox One Kinect that no one touches? And the answer is, I don't have an answer. I will say the old version of the games was called Kinect Rush, a Disney Pixar adventure, and this one is just Rush, a Disney Pixar adventure. So, and on top of that, it's apparently going to be compatible with Windows 10. So, it honestly looks like, and I don't see anything saying Kinect required, so they may have removed Kinect support entirely. It's unclear right now. But that just breaks my brain in a weird way. Hey, we're going to take two random old Kinect games from the 360, re-release them in 4K, and remove the Kinect support. Okay. This is your plan? And honestly, considering the games and considering the price, I don't think it's a very good idea. Kinda looks dumb. Anyway, moving on from the Kinect, I mentioned that there were actually some interesting VR games that came out this week that weren't Gran Turismo Sport, that's for darn sure. There's No Heroes Allowed VR, which I saw a little bit of, and that's sort of a strategy game in VR with a retro JRPG feel. Looks really nice. But the one that really intrigues me, and I will be picking up after the show, because I gotta have this, is Megaton Rainfall. Now, Megaton Rainfall was, I think expectations are the most important thing here. Because Megaton Rainfall was originally pitched to me as a VR superhero simulator. And I was like, really? And I looked at the early alpha footage, and I was like, this game looks like crap. But then again, it was an early alpha footage, so I was being an idiot for judging it so harshly. But every time people talked about it, I was like, this is too good to be true, this is too good to be true. There's no way it's going to be that good. Then yesterday, I was watching Liam from the ex Super Best Friends member, and he was streaming the game. And I was like, okay, wow, this game has blown my mind. But I could see how some people would be disappointed, because you're not really, flying into the city and saving people and using your super strength and punching villains. You're flying around and shooting at things. That's what it is. And it took me a minute, and then I realized, this is Defender. This is the old arcade game Defender, Except in VR, where you play as Superman, or possibly Goku, considering most of what you do is shoot energy blasts, and the second superpower you get is a Kamehameha that can level entire city blocks. It is also very much about collateral damage. This may be the most elaborate defense of the movie Man of Steel I have ever seen. But yes, it is the Man of Steel simulator, that's for darn sure, because the destruction model is nuts. The reason why I was all, wow, this game looks, this game seems too good to be true, is because it kind of uses similar technology to No Man's Sky. When you start out in the game, you awaken with your superpowers and you're floating in space. And then you fly down to planet Earth. And it has the entire Earth modeled. And you can fly to any city from space, and you could go back to space, and you could travel to other planets. You could go to Saturn. And I'm like, that's too good to be true. There's no way that they could do this. But through some super magical procedural generation tech, yes, they have an entire planet modeled. You can go from the depths of space all the way down to a city street and see people walking around. Mind you, once you get to city street level, it looks like a PS2 Grand Theft Auto game, and it's not like the cities are, like, super accurately modeled. You get a nice cluster of buildings, but I'm not going to say the streets are, like, 100% accurate. But, you fly to a city, there's a city there. And then there's the destruction of it. Because the enemies, I saw these worm enemies that can bore holes through the buildings. And yeah, when you shoot your energy blasts, if they miss, they will wing a building and it will collapse and it will kill people. And there's a counter for it. And you see the actual people. Like, you hear them screaming and you see them dying when you screw up. Like, it is counting actual virtual people they put on the ground and how many of them you just murdered. And the most amazing thing was at the end of the stream, Liam had to try the charge Kamehameha. And he shot it at a building, and what he didn't realize was that it was downwardly angled. So, he blows up this building, it collapses into another building, which collapses into another building, and then he begins to realize that the ground is caving in as all of the lights in the city begin to go out slowly, and they're all collapsing in on one another, and I'm like, I need this game. I need this game. Even though the core gameplay appears to literally just be Defender. Hey, here's a bunch of aliens, they're trying to abduct people and blow up cities, fly around and stop them. Pew pew. It's mostly just Defender gameplay-wise. But the ability to fly all over the planet and do all this in VR looks pretty fun, and it's not a full-priced game at all. This is I can't really mention the price, but it's priced like a downloadable game. And for a downloadable game, that looks worth it. By the way, you're probably going, wow, that kind of makes me want a VR. Good news, you don't need one. The game can be played without VR. The game actually reminds you of this because it's worried that it's going to be too intense flying all over the planet in VR. And they're like, you can, you don't even use the moves. You play with just a regular controller. So it can be played entirely outside of VR. Like it says, take a break and play the game outside of VR. Like after every mission. I've also heard the game is very short. Apparently there's only 9 missions in the game. But I hear there's a score attack mode at the end, and I really want to see the score attack mode. And I'm honestly hoping they add more modes, because, oh man, with that level of destruction you can cause, there needs to be a supervillain mode. Someone needs to add in a supervillain mode. I need to destroy the Earth in VR. That just, whoo. The stuff I saw. And the craziest thing is that the whole thing was made by, pretty much one guy. And, a lot of people were looking at it and being like, wow, this looks like a really cool proof of concept. Imagine what it would be like if a real studio was behind this. But I don't think a real studio could make a game like Megaton Rainfall. Because the entire game is kind of built out of this guy's passion for visual effects and this weird technology that he's got going on to procedurally generate the entire planet Earth and allow you to fly all over it in a game that's only like 1.5 gigs in size, which is actually considered small this generation. It's like, yeah, this is... I don't think a big company could do that. It would be too fragmented. And I thought about, you ever hear the phrase, a person is smart, people are stupid? This is like the indie equivalent of that. A person with a lot of passion could develop this kind of technology and setup, and this weird game clearly made out of this guy's crazy passion for visual effects. But a big company, it would be too micromanaged. They would not be able to really produce something quite like this. And I don't mean that as a knock against AAA games. Well, actually, AAA games are a complete mess right now. It should be. But I'm not meaning that as a knock against companies. I'm more of a middle market guy myself. I'm generally not that super fond of indie games. I think a lot of them are very overrated. But at the same time, I recognize some real passion when I see it. And the funniest thing about Megaton Rainfall, though, is that it actually does try to be an artsy game at the beginning. Like, for some reason, all the music is this crazy trance. And, like, at the start of the game, it's just, like, this super trance-like song about, wow, you can fly. This is amazing. You're flying. And it's like, wow, don't tell me this is going to be a VR walking simulator. And then, you know, they're like, okay, here's your ability to shoot, go beat up some aliens, and you finally get some sick beats. That's like, okay, now we're good. And then, you're flying to other planets, and there aren't any aliens to fight there, and it's back to, wow, you're flying. Isn't this amazing? It's dreamlike. But then the sick beats kick in again, and, the sick beats are what matter. I need to play this game. I need this game in my life. I'm so excited to try it out and just to mess around and see what it's like. Just, man, what an interesting game. Even if it is just Defender. And that seems to be one of the dividing things. So, of course, I'm checking the PlayStation VR subreddit. And, people are like, some people are like, oh, man, this is the most amazing game ever. And so others are really disappointed. It's like, yeah, I think it depends a lot on your expectations. If you expected, like, a real VR superhero sim, you're going to be disappointed. But I looked at, and that's why I'm so glad I kept my expectations in check, because I was like, I think this game sounds too good to be true, and I look at it, it's like, oh, it's Defender! I like Defender! Defender's great! And so I'm completely on board with this Megaton Rainfall thing. Now, I know a bunch of people are going to go, man, the PlayStation VR is still so expensive. Is it really worth it? I know you talk about the thing on the show a lot because you're really passionate about it. I'm going to say next console generation is when things are really going to take off. The phrase that was used that I think best describes the current state of VR is niche hobby, which is a huge improvement over what VR was about 5 years ago, which was non-existent. Pretty much, unless you happen to have one of the old 90s headsets and a way to hook it up. So it's a niche hobby. Right now, there's really no AAA games for it because, like, the PlayStation VR may well be one of the best-selling peripherals of all time. It has sold possibly 2 million units worldwide. That's really good. Problem is, a AAA game needs to sell at least 3 million, wants to sell 5 million. So, if there's only 2 million headsets out there, Now, on top of that, in order to do VR, you have to hit 60 FPS. That's why you see a lot of the big graphical downgrades in these VR games. They need to display 2 separate images, one for each eye, so you get the 3D effect. And they need to run at a solid 60 FPS. Sony won't let companies release the games unless they run at a solid 60 FPS on a regular PS4, not a Pro. And you know how much trouble companies have getting a game running at 60 FPS these days. And so they look at it and they're like, it's not worth the trouble. 24 FPS is more cinematic. Remember that? The Order 1886? Yeah. So that is more cinematic if it doesn't run at 60 FPS. So, companies have trouble with that in general, and so they, doing something like a Resident Evil 7 where it's like the game can be played entirely out of or in VR is highly, highly, highly unlikely from a lot of these companies. What VR has right now is a lot of passionate indie developers. Because there are some people, like myself, who, they try VR and they're completely blown away by it. And some of those people actually have, programming skills. They're like, I want more VR, I'll make it myself. And so that's the current state of VR, is a bunch of people going, I want more of this, I'll make it myself, selling games to one another. It's very much a niche hobby. Like, new PlayStation VR games come out every week, but they're all downloadables. And they're not always necessarily very good, and sometimes they are. Like, the Invisible Hours actually looks pretty impressive. I might give that a spin, even though that's such a walking simulator. To clarify on the Invisible Hours, that was another game I saw Liam play last night, and I was like, I might be sold on this. The idea is that it's a murder mystery about the murder of Nikola Tesla, and there's, a bunch of people walking around, and you pretty much just observe the events. The thing is, there's different stories and events going on all over the house. It's all happening in real time. So you've got one group of people talking in one room, another group of people talking in another room, someone else running around and doing something else. You're trying to figure out who the murderer actually is, and, you pick who you want to follow. And you see how things play out in this small island mansion estate thing. And you can examine things and stuff, but mostly, there's not really very much in the way of interaction. It's just watching a murder mystery play out in VR where you can follow whoever, and it's like, that seems kind of interesting. Maybe. But either way, as I was saying, VR is very much an iffy thing. It's very much for people who can't wait and want to see the new technology before it's 100% ready. But that said, it has been 1 year since the PlayStation VR was originally released. There's a new model of it, a minor upgrade. Not anything that really changes anything. Like, they removed a cable from the setup, and it better fits different kinds of earbuds. It comes with better earbuds that actually, clamp into the headset. That's about it. But so the PlayStation VR has been out for a year, and as such, we're actually starting to see some good price drops on it, and some places selling it at some pretty interesting discounts. So, if you've been sitting there going, I always want to play Resident Evil 7 in VR, Black Friday deals. This is the year for the Black Friday deals. And beyond that, though, and this is what I found interesting, the Oculus Rift over the summer had a big, limited time price drop. They're keeping the price drop. And on top of that, they just announced a thing called the Oculus Go, which is a standalone VR headset, does not require a computer, does not require a cell phone, that is going to be sold at a really low price. And I look at it and I realize, wait a second, this is a portable. This is the Virtual Boy done right, potentially. The real question is, how much power is it actually going to have? Is it essentially going to just be a Gear VR without the phone? Because that's what it looks like. But we'll see when it gets here. I think it's scheduled for the end of the year. The price is actually so low that I might attempt to save up and grab one, because I am curious what it's going to be like. And at the price point they're talking, that might be the key, but then it depends, are any of the games on it actually good? I'm just way too curious not to know. So, we're getting there. Because I completely agree with everyone who says VR is way too expensive and there aren't enough compelling games on it. There are compelling games on it, but not really anything that super sells it outside of Resident Evil 7 if you love you some Resident Evil and horror and stuff. I don't. I'm here to swing a sword, so I'm happy about raw data, but I completely agree. But those are the kinds of things that I think will be sussed out by next console generation. The prices stagnated because we didn't develop any new VR technology and there was no demand. Now that there is demand and people are trying to make these things, the cost is gradually going down while developers are gradually learning how to make cool things in VR, and it's starting to level out. I know way back at the beginning of GameBabble Live, I said, wait a year. It has now been a year, and it's very much a maybe. I don't want to attach myself to it, because it is true that the library is a bit funky, but it's really looking like things are on track for next generation. I really think that's going to be it's going to be the key. Anyway, time for another break. Coming up next is Come Together, cover of Come Together by Godsmack, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you for listening, and please stay tuned. That was Greatest Love Story by Lanco, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. And I welcome you back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. I'm your host, Jell. And it is time to get to more of the news things. Oh, wait. I got one more VR thing to mention before we get to the freaking non-VR news. Please shut up about VR, Jell, egad. Ancient Amuletors has announced what their second DLC will be. It is a Fox Girl Samurai. I bring this up because Ancient Amuletors is both awesome, and the DLC is free for like the first week or two, and then it becomes paid DLC. They already released one DLC set, which added an ice-themed set of stages along with a sort of Viking-ish character that just throws weapons. He had weapons, he just throws them, and you can throw a fish at people and it stuns them, and sometimes he'd pull out a thing of meat and you shove that in your mouth to eat it, and you throw the bone at him, and it was nutty. And yeah, next up, Fox Girl Samurai. So that's a thing. Good jobs. Good times. So, moving right along, Dragon Ball FighterZ Z has announced 2 more characters, namely Nappa and Captain Ginyu. They will be in the game. I'm super happy. I love Ginyu. So I will absolutely be maining Ginyu and Android 21. I don't know who my third will be yet. Maybe it'll just be Goku. Maybe it'll be Cell. I don't know. We'll figure something out. The game looks amazing. I love what I see with Android 21, who is the new game original character, and Captain Ginyu is always great. Also, expect Twitch to utterly explode, because apparently Nappa's special attack, his mouth beam, is called Kappa. Okay, whatever. It's the Nappa Kappa. Moving right along, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 will be adding more characters as DLC with Tapion and Android 13. Kinda awesome, because I kinda like Tapion. Moving beyond that, let's keep going with the fighting game news. Street Fighter V has added Guy's master Zeku. Guy, of course, being the Final Fight ninja guy in the running shoes. And Zeku's his master. He's been mentioned briefly before. Well, now we see him, and Zeku strangely has the ability to transform effectively into Strider. Looks like a really fun character. Kind of makes me wish I had Street Fighter V, but we've got Street Fighter V Arcade Edition coming out soon, which I'm not sure if I mentioned that. The Street Fighter V Arcade Edition is essentially going to be Street Fighter V with all the currently released DLC. Having said that, if you already own Street Fighter V, do not worry. All of the Arcade Edition updates will be coming to you for free. You do not have to rebuy the game. It is pretty much there for people like me who skipped out on Street Fighter V the first time because it was so sorely lacking in content. Street Fighter V had a rough launch. And maybe I'll pick it up with the Arcade Edition. Especially because it should be sold at a lower price. Moving past that, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite has added Black Panther and Monster Hunter, and I think Sigma is out as well. along with 18 different DLC costumes that you can download, including Dante for your Dante. On top of that, Dead or Alive 5 has released its yearly Halloween costume pack, featuring costumes created by fans of the series. Alas, my genie outfit for Lisa did not win. Instead, we have 3 different people dressed as Catwoman, and somehow Lisa got the worst Catwoman outfit. Great. I main Lisa, okay? She was a game changer for me. Having said that, Marie Rose's Black Swan costume is fantastic, and for some reason you can play as Alpha 152 with an afro? I think I need this. I'm a little disappointed by this year's Halloween costume set, I'll be honest, but even still, there's a few winners in there, and I think this, or maybe the next one, will be the last DLC costume pack for Dead or Alive 5. It had a good run, 5 years of DLC, thousands of costumes, and so much money that could be spent on it. They did a good job, though, because Dead or Alive 5 was such a weird thing, because the game came out and it flopped, really. Only hardcore Dead or Alive fans really picked up Dead or Alive 5, and it was really the DLC that kept the game afloat, so they turned it into a free-to-play game. Loosely speaking, there were still boxed releases that came with more content, but you could also download it for free and buy each character individually, and they pretty much supported the game with DLC costumes. With Last Round, they were actually releasing a new costume pack every month. Now, it is finally time to retire all of this because, oh egad, Team Ninja has too much work to do. They've got their Fire Emblem Warriors coming out. They're finishing up the Nioh DLC. I bet you they're working on a Nioh too, because that game was pretty successful from my understanding. And on top of that, they've got Final Fantasy Dissidia NT coming to PS4, and that game is kind of in need of some new characters they could really use to flesh out the roster a little more, and it's going to need some tweaks, because honestly, Final Fantasy Dissidia was kind of a mess. They actually overhauled the entire UI for the game, for the home release, because everyone was like, this is the most cluttered, nonsensical UI I've ever seen. They're like, oh, maybe we should fix that. So, Team Ninja's kind of a little busy with so many other projects. I guess they really don't have time to support the 5-year-old Dead or Alive 5. But it had a good run. I really enjoyed it. I have no clue how they'll pull off Dead or Alive 6, or if they even will pull off a Dead or Alive 6. But it has been a good time. And speaking of Dead or Alive, Ayane, Marie Rose, and Honoka have all been released for Senran Kagura Peach Beach Splash as DLC characters. Moving past fighting games and DLC, Dragon's Crown Pro has been delayed a little bit in Japan. It will be coming in February. Dragon's Crown Pro is a PS4 port of Dragon's Crown, which will run in 4K, and will be completely compatible with the PS3 and Vita versions of the game. So if you don't have a PlayStation 4, even still good news, because when the PlayStation 4 version comes out, there will be an influx of new players, and I fully intend to purchase the game for a third time, because it's freaking Dragon's Crown. That should mean that my save data should carry over, but it will have one new thing. They are going to have a virtual tabletop RPG included in Dragon's Crown called the Demon's Island or something, where you choose your character and you get a character sheet and there is a virtual game book. I'm hoping the announcer will read it. I'm really excited to see how it plays, but yes, you get to play some single player D&D in Dragon's Crown Pro. So I'm super excited about that. I'm generally excited for Dragon's Crown. Moving even further past that, they have announced that they will be releasing collectible Pokemon Evolution Stones. It is a box that contains a Firestone, Water Stone, and Thunderstone. The box looks exactly like the Evolution set box from the episode about Eevees. I don't know. I want to say that was Pokemon episode 18. The one with Mikey and the Eevee brothers. First season, was all about the evolution stones. They had the evolution stone set, which had the fire. It is the exact same box. The stones look beautiful because it's supposed to be, hey, look at this collector's item. Hey, these collectible stones look just like they did in the TV show and the card game. And it's supposed to be a fancy collector's thing, and it's mildly expensive. So, yeah, it's a neat item. That's going to be coming out. People will probably enjoy that. Did I miss something? No, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Lastly, Sonic Forces. Sonic Forces has released some new trailers, and they've introduced a new feature. You will be able to rent other people's custom characters in a manner somewhat similar to Dragon's Dogma. The way it works is during the custom character stages, you can rent another character and you can tag team with them, tagging out to use a different Wisp-on, because the whole idea with the custom characters, aside from the fact they have a grappling hook, is that they use Wisp-themed weaponry called Wisp-ons. And each one has its own unique strengths and weaknesses, and by having a tag team partner, you'll be able to use two different Wisp-ons, and then there will be more of a point to making your custom character look as super cool as you possibly can. So that'll be fun. I'm also loving the fact that, Sega's been showing more music from Sonic Forces. Looks like all the custom character stages get vocal themes. Like this weird vocal dance with a smidge of trance music. Classic Sonic gets all Sega Genesis style music, and regular Sonic gets the classic butt rock music, or modern Sonic rather, sorry. Modern Sonic gets butt rock music, classic Sonic gets Genesis music, and your custom character gets crazy vocal, almost dance-ish music. I'm loving the soundtrack. It sounds amazing. They've already confirmed it'll have an orchestral end boss theme once again. I'm way too excited for Sonic Forces. It probably won't be as good as Sonic Mania, but it's looking fun. But here's the craziest thing. It's annoying that I can't mention prices. Sonic Forces will be released below full price. Can't name prices, but I will say it is 2/3 the cost of a regular game. So, that's nice. Didn't see that coming. That will certainly make up for the fact the game will inevitably be short. I think it's going to have 30 stages, maybe a couple more. 10 for each type of character. So I don't know what they're doing with the tag team stages. I don't know where that'd be classified or if that might go over the 30 count. But it's sounding like we're going to have 30 stages for Sonic Forces, which isn't the worst number ever, but I'm sure that will be 30 stages you will blow through in 30 minutes. So it might be a smidge short, but I'm too excited for it. It's so cheesy. Oh, egad, have you seen the story trailer for Sonic Forces? I love it. I love it. It is so stupid and cheesy and melodramatic. I'm in. I love dumb crap like this. I am completely in. Moving past video games, though, so yesterday, the USA versus Japan giant robot fight happened. Remember that? For those of you who haven't been following this, there was a Kickstarter for a group called Megabots Incorporated, and they were like, we want a Kickstarter so we can build a giant robot. And then they built a giant robot. Meanwhile, in Japan, there was a company called Suidobashi that made a giant robot called Kuratas, which was actually mass-produced, and it was very much a showpiece. Like, you could actually order a Kuratas robot, and it's a beautiful-looking machine. They were, of course, ridiculously expensive, but still, there is a company in Japan that mass-produces robots that you can show off and shoot some paintballs out of. It's nice. And yeah, as soon as we had our giant robot built, we called up Suidobashi Industries, was like, fight us! Come at me, bro! And sure enough, they accepted and they arranged a match. I will say, it was the most pre-scripted thing I'd ever seen. It was kind of dumb and kind of cheesy, and not particularly exciting, and the Kuratas was not well equipped for such a fight since it is more a showpiece than an actual fighter. I would almost call our use of a chainsaw cheating, But okay, we strapped a chainsaw to our mech. That happened. But what was fun was actually getting to see giant robots slam into each other, even if they went incredibly slowly and fired tennis balls at one another. It was still neat to see. And what's interesting is that there was a post-fight interview where they said that they are talking with 24 companies around the world that are considering building giant robots to fight with. They want to try to do a giant robot league, and I'm like, oh, more power to you. I'll watch. Why not? Screw it. A lot of people though walked away very disappointed, but I was like, it was nice. It was nice. It was a thing. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad we are making progress in the realm of building actual giant robots. I feel that is important. So, I think it is time for a break, and when we come back, I mentioned WWE 2K18. We will round off the show by talking about my current experiences with it. I've barely scratched the surface of the game. And I will be honest, I skipped last year's wrestling game because of certain downgrades to the character creation. I've just spent a lot of time in the character creator, and I've got things to say. So when we get back, we will talk WWE 2K18, how that's shaping up. But until then, here is Failure by Breaking Benjamin, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was Lady by Austin Mahoney, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. So that means we're coming up on the last half hour, and I realize there's a few things I forgot to mention. First of all, Star Ocean 4 is actually coming out a lot faster than I thought. The remaster of it. They are re-releasing Star Ocean 4 on PlayStation 4 in 4K Ultra HD. Supposed to be beautiful. Really, just having it run at a better frame rate will be nice, because I remember it not having the greatest frame rate back on 360. Anyway, it is coming to America. Where did I put that number? There it is, November 28th. So, pretty soon, considering it was, announced last week. Also, Hori is releasing a new PlayStation 4 mini controller. It is a wired controller that lacks the light bar, and it just has a button for pushing in the touchpad instead of an actual touchpad. It's missing a lot of the features of the PlayStation 4 controller, but is sold at half the price, which is nice. Because, egad, have you seen the prices of video game controllers these days? It's stupid. They did the same thing for the Nintendo Switch, too. Hori is releasing these lower price wired controllers to make up for the fact that video game controllers are too expensive. You need that Player 2 controller for your friend, and you don't want to break the bank. That's what Hori's trying to do, and I thank them. Thank you, Hori, for delivering, for giving us the controllers we need. Also, in Japan, there will be a Dragon Quest Slime special edition of this controller, so you know what I'm importing. Anyway, moving past that, WWE 2K18 came out this past week, and as usual, it has been a ride. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not actually a big wrestling fan, and I don't actually purchase these games that often. The last one I got was 2K16. And the reason I did this was because of custom characters, because I love making custom characters, and wrestling games inexplicably have the greatest character customization ever. The thing is, I poked my head in with some of the PS2 wrestling games back in the day, and I was like, oh, this is nice. There's a lot of options, but the character models for the custom characters don't look very good. Then the 360 rolled around, And I poked my head in again and realized they were using the same custom character models. Literally ported it straight from PS2. So now the character models looked like 2 generations behind if you were making a custom character. They kept adding more features, but yeah, they all looked terrible. Then, with WWE 2K15 moving on to the PlayStation 4, they realized we gotta hit the reset button. We have to redo our graphics engine. And that sent everything back to square one. Everyone hated it because so many features were lost because they had to redo a bunch of the engine in order to upgrade the graphics to something that's actually up to PS4 standards. But 2K15 was so lacking in content, I was like, I'll wait till next year. 2K16 rolls around, I pick it up. I generally had fun with it. But egad, that game was a mess. It took like 3 minutes to change any option in the create a character. And I crash that thing so often. If you go on YouTube, on my personal channel, the Gelton Z1, there's a video called The Struggle with Pants is Real, where I try to put a stripe on the side of a pair of pants. And inexplicably, this causes untold amounts of chaos as I repeatedly crash the game. And at one point, I managed to trick the game into letting me put the stripe on there. And the stripe disappears, only showing up on the entrance attire, not the in-ring attire. And my character's hair just starts freaking out. And I'm like, why would that happen? Why would putting a stripe on a pair of pants cause hair to go crazy? If anything, though, it shows why playtesting and bug fixing is so tricky. Because you never know when fixing one bug will break, fixing one thing will break another thing. You never know when putting a stripe on a pair of pants is somehow tied to hair physics. I don't know why it happened, but it did. So, I skipped 2K17 though, just gave it a rent and was like, no, because they didn't improve the game enough. The load times were better. It was a bit cleaned up. They added some new hairstyles, but they actually took away the proportion edits from 2K16. So I was like, 2K16 actually kind of has better character customization. Now 2K18 is here, and my first question was, is proportion edit back? And I go on YouTube, they have this big thing, and they have this guy saying, yes, proportion edit is back. We have this new system in place where you choose 2 body types, you morph between them, and then you can go to each individual body type and tweak them personally. And I was like, great. And then I get the game, and I'm like, what is this? See, the proportion edit is unfortunately kind of busted. You do not have as much freedom as you had with 2K16 once again. Much of this is because it is bizarrely backwards. Like, most, proportion edit type things would, with a slider bar, would start you at 50%, right? And then you can either make something bigger or smaller. Here, you can only make things bigger for the most part. And you make them bigger by decreasing the number. Like, they all start at 100%, and 100% is minimum size. And then you decrease it, and the proportions get bigger. And all I can do is sit there and go, why did you do it like this? This should have been at 50%, not 100%. And going up should make things bigger, and going down should make things smaller, like it does for literally all the other slider bars in the game. What were you doing? There's a proportion edit here, but it works slightly wonky. On top of that, there's no mirror function for face editing. This was a big problem I had with 2K16. They introduced this new system where you could choose each part of the face and click on it, and these little dots would appear. You could stretch and tweak it, and it was like molding the face, and it was super cool, except that when you, edit one eye, it doesn't edit the other eye. And there was no good way to get your eyes and your eyebrows and the 2 sides of your face symmetrical. Somehow, that feature still isn't in the game 2 years later, even though it seems blatantly obvious. Now, they did make things a bit better because aside from just being able to click on things and tweak them by moving the dots around, they also put in slider bars. So you're thinking, Great. We are in business. I can just match the slider bars. Like, okay, eye tip stretch 15. On the left eye, we do eye tip stretch 15 on the right eye. And I tried this last night, and I came to a horrifying realization. The left and right sides aren't symmetrical in this game anyway. No wonder I was having so much trouble with it back in 2K16. Because even if you match the exact same numbers on the left eye and the right eye, they will be stretched differently, inherently. The character model that they are using has asymmetrical eyes. And as such, you need to compensate for the incompetence of the developers to try to get the eyes vaguely right. But, to its credit, the load times are actually reasonable this year. I mentioned before that back in WWE 2K16, it took literally 3 minutes to, do anything, to change any option in the game. Because every time you clicked on something, it would have to load it up, and the load times were ludicrous. Now, not only does it not as often load things up, not only can you switch what you're loading in the middle of a load, but the load times are much faster. It is actually a functional character creation system, just there's a few things that are still built backwards and stupid. Like, I've encountered all sorts of weird hiccups, like, if you give a character pigtails and you put, headphones on them, or a mask or something, it does some really dumb things. I found out that, the lipstick opacity slider is busted, because if you tweak it at all from 100%, then it will show up in the character creator, but not actually in the game. There's all sorts of weird issues with the character creator, but okay. They've added enough options that I think I'm fine with it, even though it still doesn't have WWE 2K16's proportion edit. That's still a problem. But there's, of course, plenty of other problems in the game, and I don't know how many of them were actually fixed. See, they pulled some complete BS where they're like, oh, if you buy the super special Ultimate Edition of the game, you get it 4 days early. But 4 days early meant no day one patch, and there were a lot of interesting bugs that people ran into, including career mode completely falling apart. One guy actually showed a screenshot of him being asked to win a match with 0 stars. There's no way to get 0 stars. You always start at 1. There's things in there, and it does have the 2K virtual currency system, which is kind of scammy, but I think that's only for one stupid mode. I'm not sure how important it is this time around. I'm still feeling things out for what's wrong with the game. Obviously, it's a buggy mess. It's WWE. All the games are a buggy mess. To the point where a lot of people are saying, why do they still hire Ukes to make these games? To which my response is, because everyone else does it worse? See, that's the thing. Ukes is one of the big wrestling game developers, and I've seen them do a good job in the past. Obviously, the other big one is Aki, but I don't know if they're still in business. And the Fire Pro team has always had limited success with 3D wrestling. More than likely, what I'm hearing is that when the WWE license was sold from THQ to 2K Games, they were told they had to keep Ukes as the developer. I'm thinking that it's because Ukes had already put so much into the WWE brand. But on top of that, a lot of people complain about WWE 2K15, and rightfully so, because that game was a huge engine reset. And that meant that a lot of features got shuffled around and changed and removed and have to be added back in because they're kind of nuking everything and starting from square one. If you gave this license to another company, that's what would happen. The game would be nuked back to square one, and I don't know if they could ever get it up to what Yuke's has done, and that's on top of taking a gamble with if they can produce a good game. Because we had some real clunkers back in the PS2 Xbox generation. PS2 Xbox GameCube. But there were also some winners, and this is where things get interesting. As someone pointed out, before the sale to 2K games, there were spin-off games. There were games made by other developers, and I do agree that's what we need. I don't think getting rid of Yuke's is going to fix any of the problems with the game, because they could honestly get worse, believe it or not. But I do agree that there should probably be more wrestling games out there, especially because, I think the company went out of business. I need to double check something. Was the game called Superstars? All-Stars! WWE All-Stars. A lot of people, I've been meaning to pick this game up, having actually a pretty hard time finding it. A lot of people swear by that game. It is supposed to be a super fun arcade-style wrestler with really, really goofy, cartoony-looking renditions of the characters, and a lot of people really love it, and really, that was a good example of what letting other developers mess around with spin-off games could do. We kind of need one of those again. That's how you actually manage to replace Yuke's, is you kind of have to let everyone else try out while Yuke's still does their thing. And actually gets some competition, actually has a reason to try to make their games better. So I do agree with that. I admit I mostly defend Yuke's because I have fond memories of Evil Zone and I like Rumble Roses. the whole reason I even started playing wrestling games recently was because of Rumble Roses. Because I played it back on PS2, that game was fantastic, and then all the reviews were like, this is pretty much just a WWE SmackDown game, but minus a lot of the features. And I'm like, really? Well, let me try this SmackDown. And they were partially right, except Rumble Roses had like way better presentation, which is one of the nice things the newest wave of these games has done. The presentation has definitely improved. To anyone who's listening and wondering, did they change anything about the weird mini games you play for pinning and submissions and so on? The answer is no. Those are still there. The countering, pinning, submission thing, it still plays very close to WWE 2K16. Just more polished, but of course also bringing along a new set of strange bugs and hiccups. It's always give and take. It's push and pull with these games. I need to rent, when 2K19 comes out next year, I need to freaking rent it first instead of just jumping the gun and buying it like an idiot. I should never, ever, ever trust a YouTube thing saying, oh yeah, we totally have proportion sliders. You see, because what you don't realize is when they say they weren't lying, they had the sliders, they just didn't mention that they worked like stupid. Cripes and criminy. So that's about where we're at with WWE 2K18. I'm sorry I can't give you a more in-depth explanation of what's up with the game. I progress very, very slowly with those things because, of course, I tend to just make a lot of custom wrestlers, and then I fire everyone in the WWE and put my custom wrestlers in there. That's what I did with 2K16. It was a hoot. I heard about another bug in story mode where your custom wrestler can hear that they were talking smack about themselves, and that they should go beat themselves up. Sounds like there's some class acts in this game. I think the general takeaway should be tread lightly with WWE 2K18. I'm not going to say it's terrible. I do think some of the things people are saying about the game are drastically exaggerated, but it might be a smidge buggy. But then again, it's the kind of game that gives you so many options and so many modes and so much freedom that bugs are going to happen. That's the thing, is the more stuff you can do in a game, the more freedom you have, the more options you have, the more bugs can arise. That's why Skyrim was chock full of bugs. That's why all free-roaming open-world games are so chock full of bugs, is because there's so much you can do that there's so much that can break. And that's what the wrestling games are like. There's so many custom character options. There's so many match types. There's so many moves. You never know when one of these things is going to go awry. It's hard to test every single possible combination for it to work. Like, here's an amazing thing. I'm hearing that if you give your custom wrestler a singlet, if they're wearing a singlet, there's a button command you can do to make them instantly fall down. Why? Why is that a thing? What? No, just, what? Why? Why is that linked to a piece of clothing? Why is there a mysterious new button command linked to a piece of clothing that your custom wrestler wears that will cause them to fall down when you... Why is that a thing? Why does putting a stripe on a pair of pants cause my hair to go insane? This is what I'm talking about. These are the kinds of things that happen. And I'm not gonna excuse it. I'm not gonna say, oh, it's perfectly fine that you've now run into a bug that causes you to stop in story mode because you have to win a match with 0 stars. I'm hoping they would patch such a thing very soon. But I understand why these things happen. Understanding why they happen does not mean I entirely excuse them. Just, bugs tend to come on a priority scale, and there's a bunch of things. But there you go, that's what's up with that game, and I do believe I've covered everything I have come here to cover. Yes, I have. Once again, though, Gran Turismo Sport is not a game you buy for VR. I legitimately cannot believe Sony is pulling that. That is a really bad call. It is a bad look for Sony. If you missed it at the beginning of the show, Sony is heavily advertising the VR mode for Gran Turismo Sport. They're actually selling a Gran Turismo PlayStation VR bundle pack, and the VR mode is just one-on-one races against a really dumb AI, and that is it. It is incredibly neutered and lacking in options. You can't change anything about it. It's terrible. It is a lazily tacked on VR mode, and Sony is pushing it super hard. Go to Game FAQs right now. Hit up their PlayStation 4 section. You will see a full site advertisement for it. And yeah, no. Anyway, that concludes this week's episode of GameBabble Live. Please tune in next Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. for the latest video game news and information from all the heck over the place. I've been your host, Jell. I hope that you have enjoyed the show. I've enjoyed the show. It's been a hoot. Anyway, coming up next is Dig Down by Muse, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Hopefully.